You want to record?
Thank you, Bob. It's very nice having a professional voice actor in the family. So I invite you to take a deep breath, to let your shoulders down, to open your heart, your ears, and your spirit for whatever is here for you this day. We have a long haul ahead of us. Actually, we have a number of them ahead of us. Wow. Pardon me. I lost my sermon. Oh, okay.
That's too fast right now.
Oh my goodness.
Don't touch these.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, and with technology, we seem to have a lot of long hauls ahead of us. We all know that dealing with this virus and pandemic will take a long time, and most of us are already weary. The economic hardships that have resulted from the pandemic will not be quickly resolved. Addressing the political discord in our country will be an uphill battle. Dismantling white supremacy is going to take a lot of intentional effort over a lot of time. These are the things that we are all facing right now. And almost everyone listening to this sermon today has their own individual long hauls. Perhaps you are recovering from a surgery or illness. Maybe you are building or rebuilding some relationships. Maybe you are learning a new language or learning how to deal with mental illness, your own or that of a loved one. Perhaps you are serious about improving your health and getting in shape. It seems the nature of adult life involves long hauls. It's very much like being on a very long hike. At the beginning, you have the energy and excitement about this adventure. You can do this. This won't be a problem. And then you begin walking and walking and walking and walking. You start to think that this hike might be longer than you had anticipated. That's a little disappointing. You shake that off and walk some more. And at some point, your inner 3-year-old begins to whine. Why is this taking so long? We should be there by now. This is stupid. And the wiser part of your brain tries to calm that inner child. You keep walking and finally come to the top of the hill. And it feels like you are making some progress. And when you come over the rise, you have a great view, and what you see is a lot of hills. And now your child just flips out. What are you going to do? Maybe just flop down on the path, decide you aren't taking another step? Well, that won't work. At some point, you've got to get up and move forward or go back. You really can't just sit on the path until you turn into dust under another hiker's boots. You get up and walk some more, all the time grumbling about it, wondering why you decided to do this ridiculous hike. Where did you get the idea that it would be just a snap? There are all sorts of unpleasantries going through your head. You are dragging your feet, your head is down, and you are looking at the ground. This disappointment and resentment can go on for quite a while. Then you come to the realization that this hike will last as long as it lasts. All of the complaining, grumbling, and swearing do not make a dent in its length. You resign yourself to this fact. And notice that I did not say you accept this fact. That might come later, but resign carries a bit of defeat in it. We are relinquishing our ideas about how this hike should be. We are submitting ourselves to the truth. Now we are ready to deal with what is. This gives us almost unlimited options. We can march doggedly onward until we reach our destination. We can pick our head up and enjoy the sights, sounds, smells of nature. We can sing, recite poetry, pray. We can trudge, walk, or dance. Nothing has changed. The hike is still just as long. I take that back. What has changed is our relationship to our situation. We can't change the length of this hike. We can determine how we walk it. Viktor Frankl famously said, "Everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." And this truth opens us up to tools, character traits, and ideas that could change an owner's journey into something more palatable and perhaps even enjoyable. Pardon me. Refreshment for the long road. Patience makes a huge difference in an uphill battle. This is the ability to bear pain or trauma calmly without complaint. It's not being hasty or impetuous or impulsive. Patience is steadfast despite opposition and difficulty. It is a skill and a character trait that develops as we use it. And the important point here is that we can use it intentionally. Anybody can wait. Patience is not about waiting. Patience is about your behavior while you are waiting. It's about calmness, peacefulness, and a quiet strength. It's difficult to sit next to the person in the waiting room, bouncing their leg and drumming their fingers on the table and exhaling exasperated sighs. Under all this agitation is a state of anxiety. A lack of self-confidence is tapped out through those fingers and bouncing knee. The person is unsettled. A person may not like waiting, yet they display a self-assurance that they can handle whatever comes up if they wait with patience. It's interesting to note that both the word patience that we've been talking about and the word patient, such as those I deal with in hospice, come from the same Latin root meaning to suffer. And almost anyone who has ever been a patient knows that healing takes a great deal of patience. This time of waiting is one of the places where spirituality makes a big difference. Positive spirituality makes a difficult situation better. We are more settled. And faith should be big enough to encompass the truth. Good religion does not support denial or magical thinking. Instead, our beliefs help us to respond to new possibilities, to see open doors and potential pathways we would have missed if we weren't accepting the reality of the situation. Religion helps us make meaning out of our long hauls. It calls on us to live out our values, even when there could be an easier, softer way. Doug Mutter writes in A Religion for Hard Times, "You have no guarantees of where this will lead you, only the confidence that you are doing what you can do and that you will be able to accept the consequences, whatever they turn out to be. You and your God or community or higher self, or whatever your understanding, will cope with whatever happens. Even if things turn out badly, all is not lost." Good theology, constructive spirituality, and meaningful religious practices help us through the stormy seas. They don't necessarily make the situation feel more agreeable. In fact, there are times our faith makes things harder, times when courage, integrity, kindness, and compassion make ignoring the truth spiritually wrong. Most religions value patience. We seek to develop more patience through daily spiritual practices. We are also building the skills to stay steady and thoughtful, especially when all around us is an impulse for reaction. Faith and spirituality teach us about trusting what is bigger than ourselves, and this is the foundation that undergirds it all. This is how the patient person exudes an air of dignity and strength. They know that this too shall pass, and they expect in some manner that all shall be well. Patience is a virtue that serves us. Even when we're slogging through interminable delays and unexpected obstacles, patience is indispensable. We also need perseverance. There's no way through the long haul without it. Continuing to work toward a destination despite difficulties, failure, opposition, and setback, that stick-to-itness is the greatest factor in reaching our goal. Research shows it's not enough to be smart or talented. To get where we want to go in life, we need grit. Angela Duckworth, a University of Pennsylvania psychologist, invented the grit scale. And she led a number of studies on how grit impacts people's success. Grit is that powerful combination of stamina, perseverance, and passion for long-term goals. It's not just self-control. Self-control can work for the short term. Something else is needed when there's a long road ahead. Duckworth devised a study where 1,281 new cadets at West Point were given an IQ test and then also given a questionnaire that could help them determine their grit scale. And the cadets had just arrived before a notoriously grueling boot camp called the Beast Barracks. By the end of the exercise, 71 students had dropped out. The grit scale was the best barometer of predicting which cadets would march back the final 12 miles to cross the finish line. At the Scripps National Spelling Bee, the grit scale did a better job than the IQ scores of predicting which participants would make it to the final round. Gritty children work harder and longer than their less gritty peers. Duckworth suggests that parents and teachers help kids learn to study with stamina, not just intensity. Another component of grit is a curious blend of fatalism and optimism called the Stockdale paradox, named for Admiral Jim Stockdale, the highest ranking officer kept as a prisoner at the Hanoi Hotel during the Vietnam War. This paradox is the ability to have a complete understanding of the gravity of any given situation, yet still have what Stockade refers to as faith in the end of the story. Stockade explained that something that seems very counterintuitive. The people who didn't make it out of the notorious prison were the optimists, the people who kept thinking that freedom was coming sooner rather than later, only to have their hopes dashed again and again as the days passed by and they went unrescued. The realists focused on enduring a potentially very long imprisonment, 8 years in Stockdale's case, were the ones who survived. Grit also requires the ability to revise how one looks at failure. A kick in the teeth might be just what is needed. Failure can act like rocket fuel, and history is filled with stories of wildly successful people who failed miserably before reaching their goal. Lucille Ball, Dr. Seuss, Beyonce Knowles, Thomas Edison, Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, and Vera Wang, to name a few. Perseverance is not something people are born with. It has to be taught. Those of us who quit piano lessons because we didn't like practicing missed the point. We weren't supposed to like it. Perseverance has to be learned through practice and use, and it becomes stronger. Obstacles that used to stop us in our tracks become just a bump in the road. In this world, there are unlimited opportunities to practice perseverance. But getting through the long haul also requires purpose. Whether we are dealing with irritation or seemingly unbearable circumstances, remembering why we are going through the hard times is one of the quickest ways to restore resolve. A friend of mine told me that in order to become a published author, he always kept his eye on the prize. As best we can, we need to have clarity about our purpose. Why do I want to become an anti-racist? Why does climate change matter to me? Reasons for embarking on a long haul are varied and complex. Yet there are times when the objective is simple and urgent: survival. Cancer, betrayal, financial crisis, lack of power, and mental and physical health are just some of the ways that we wind up on long, drawn-out journeys that we didn't sign up for. As Americans, we like to believe that we always have a choice: chocolate, strawberry, or vanilla. Yet there are times when life doesn't give us much of a choice. Sometimes the choice is vanilla. That's it. That's the choice. These limited option situations are usually enmeshed with our mortality. We don't always get to choose our purpose. People and play can make tribulation better when it takes over our lives. And it becomes vital to have people and play in our world. Now, I could happily preach on this topic all day. I probably wouldn't tell you anything you haven't already heard. And then in this time of pandemic, we are hearing daily about the lifelines our communities throw out to us. Similarly, the need to play, be creative, perform, and laugh are essentials, not luxuries. A good sense of humor has saved us from the paralysis of inaction and the pit of despair. Another marathon runner, Kate Petrio, wrote about what she needs for the long haul. The question about how to run and not grow weary makes me think of a Gandhi prayer that we recite weekly in the Spirit Play classroom. Specifically this line: "My wisdom comes from within and without." Endurance and motivation come both from internal and external sources. To finish a long race, a difficult race, you must leverage both. Internally is the mental and physical training, desire. And this applies to everything: the desire to work hard, the desire to achieve a personal goal, the things you tell yourself to keep going when you feel like giving up. Think about the work you put in that would be all for naught if you quit. Externally, our world has so many sources of inspiration. You think of your family, you think of your friends, you think of a favorite person at church. We can do hard things, and you repeat it as a mantra when your energy is slipping away. Wisdom from within and without. Extroverts might connect easily with others, but it takes more effort to make those connections and conversations meaningful. Introverts might have a more fluid access to the inner world of the psyche and creativity. It's so easy to isolate when so much of our energy is focused on making it through a trial. Both extroverts and introverts find that allowing other people to help them is one of our most challenging exercises. We have a number of ready excuses. I did a sermon on this not too long ago, but I'll just touch on 2 points today. First, this kind of vulnerability, the kind that lets others see our weakness, this is what will save us individually and collectively. And second, it's not all about us. Sometimes other people need to give, and it's not just a nice gesture. For various reasons, it becomes a need. Their need to help surpasses our discomfort. There's a wonderful spiritual maxim. The true test of spiritual maturity is the ability to give as well as the ability to receive. Surprisingly, one of the most effective tools to use when we are currently in a really rough patch is the past, specifically our own past. This is a good time to remind ourselves of our resilience. It's useful to ask ourselves, what tough times have we made it through before? This isn't our first rodeo. What else have we survived? And it's easy to forget our courage and resolve when we are in the middle of a seemingly insurmountable hardship. Yet recalling the stories of past successes offers an honest boost to our flagging current selves. And let's also ask ourselves, what helped before? Who were the people? What were the mantras? When did I experience some hope? Where did I feel safe? Can I use any of those again? If something helped before and we're not sure it would work now, is there a way it could be modified? If my beloved pet is no longer with me and I don't have access to animals, perhaps watching funny cat videos and happy dog compilations on YouTube can remind me of the unbridled happiness that is still in the world. Many folks find themselves going back to their religious past for comfort, even if it wouldn't mesh with their current beliefs. So often people will tell me, I don't want to admit this, but... And then they proceed to share about praying to the guardian angel of their childhood. They may not even be sure if they believe in God, and yet this brings them comfort. Or I'll hear, it probably seems funny that a 54-year-old man would curl up under the covers holding a stuffed animal that was given to me by a special person. I sleep better when I hold it. Others find themselves reading religious texts or devotionals that they gave up long ago, looking at old pictures of religious figures, saying old prayers, singing old songs. These are things from the past that still bring some succor, even if they don't seem to make sense. These marathon trials, unexpected setbacks, and unending misfortunes can rile up fears about survival. Consciously or not, worries about our survival and the survival of our loved ones are not easily assuaged. Comfort is more often effective than the best verbal argument. As long as returning to our past is not harmful, it's a good tool to have when addressing the dilemmas that mess up our lives. And this leads us into the need to give ourselves permission. Making it through the long haul can, at times, require that you put your head down, keep your nose to the grindstone, and don't look up. And in this mode, it's easy to grind away your personality and zest for living. Reverend Barta Merritt writes, those of us who worship excellence, accomplishment, and achievement are play challenged. Too many of us only feel in our natural element, with our nose to the grindstone, caught up in the never-ending exercise of busyness, doing, acting, performing, executing, putting forth, that's what counts. Living this way doesn't feel like much of living or success. That's why it's important to give ourselves permission to honor the wholeness of who we are, permission to be fully human, even when we're under confining circumstances. One of the first things to go in a crisis is personal care. We know we can survive on caffeine and sugar. Just a word here. When the disaster relief workers and chaplains deploy to an emergency as professionals, They are required to attend to their own physical, mental, and spiritual needs first. They cannot work the long haul if they are depleted. They don't make good decisions, and they can add to the disaster by their lack of self-care. If that happens, they are sent back home. Some of us may need to give ourselves the permission for this most basic human need, especially when we think we have to focus on our long haul. As full human beings, we have the right and the need to express emotions and feelings that come upon us during an arduous journey. For this reason, I'm a firm believer in adult temper tantrums. I can pretty much guarantee that if you take a young child and drag them around the mall all day, at some point there's going to be a tantrum. And as adults, there's only so much slogging away that a person can handle. On the absurd and obscene labyrinths we doggedly drag ourselves through, sometimes we need to let off a little steam. Adult temper tantrums can be as loud and physical as buying a box of old china at the Goodwill store, taking it home and smashing it to pieces. And these tantrums can be as unremarkable as scheduling a day off for work and not going in. The rules for adult temper tantrums are simple. Don't hurt yourselves or others. Give yourself the privacy and the space that you need so you don't have to hold back. Don't break anything you don't want broken. Don't say anything you will regret. And don't set yourselves up for any consequences you can't easily pay. Remember, these are adult tantrums. It's an act of self-compassion to acknowledge how hard, frustrating, maddening, and all-consuming these long hauls can be. The diaries of many of the early pioneer women speak to this. Wagon trains were not the romantic adventures media has made them out to be. They were mind-numbingly monotonous and physically grueling. Walk from dawn to dusk, set up camp, eat, sleep, break camp, get up and walk again, and repeat this for months and months and months. When there were exciting events, they rarely turned out well. Death was everywhere. If the travelers were not attending to one of their own company dying, they would happen upon the bodies of dead people from a previous group. It was common for a wagon train to come upon the shallow graves of earlier travelers where the wolves had pulled them out of the earth. The trails were littered with the furniture and tools and books and other treasures that previous wagon trains had jettisoned. The next company would come upon all these goods, and they were too tired to investigate and see if there was anything worth keeping. Instead, they lightened their own load and tossed their own belongings out onto the ground. Crossing the country in a covered caravan was foul, exhausting, boring, terrifying, and full of grief. The diaries say that every once in a while, a lone woman would leave the wagon train. She would walk off on her own until she couldn't be seen, and the whole train was gone from her sight. And then she'd cry. She would sob and wail and rock herself and cry until there were no tears left. And then when she was cried out, she would get up, dust off her dress, and walk back to join the train. Sometimes just letting it out, in whatever form that takes, is the best way to keep going when the going has gotten impossible. And one final strategy for moving through the long haul is to pay attention. Be here now. This is Mindfulness 101. And it would be still silly of me to stand here and preach about the benefits of mindfulness to a group of Unitarian Universalists. Instead, I offer the reminder that practicing mindfulness can help us detach from our pain. Our physical and emotional feelings will change over time, and we can notice them without taking them too seriously. We want to pay attention to our pain, but remember that it is a sensation. It is not who we are. It's also helpful to pay attention to whatever goodness we encounter. Consider starting a gratitude journal, where you write down at least 3 things each day for which you are grateful. An attitude of gratitude is not Pollyanna. It doesn't wipe out all the negatives we experience. It does, however, point out to us that some things are going well. Some things may even be sublime. Attending to the positive suggests to us that the universe is not out to get us. There's encouragement and hope. We are in charge of our attitude. Gratitude can show us that there are things that are enjoyable, even when we're slogging along. There is no easy way through the long haul. And we are in the middle of several national, global tribulations. There are no great tricks or wondrous hacks that will give us smooth sailing. We might not have chosen to be in these predicaments, or even the ones that we did enter willingly are surprisingly tough. And we have options. We have tools and traits to smooth out some of the bumps and to get us through the impossible spots. After we've resigned ourselves to what is, we can endure it with patience. We can keep going on with perseverance, even though everything within us wants to quit. We restore our resolve when we remember our purpose. Long hauls are easier to tolerate when we look up from the grindstone to connect with people and play. Our past offers guidance about what works for us and points out for us where we've been successful before. We can give ourselves permission to care for our own needs and attend to our own emotions. And finally, if we pay attention, we can be fully present while detaching from the suffering, and we can fill our hearts with gratitude for all the goodness we still see. During these next months and years, may your long hauls bring you deeper into your own life rather than pulling you away from it. May you make good use of all the opportunities to practice the skills and the character traits that will see you through. May you be blessed for undertaking such arduous tasks, knowing that your purpose is true. And may you have such surprisingly satisfying experiences, or at least enough of them, that your long haul instead becomes a journey. Amen and amen. So we have time. Oops, I think, Chuck, you are frozen. But this will be the opportunity to hear from others and your experience.